All right, I need to attribute my source. This book is published by Glencoe McGraw-Hill, the writer's choice. It is a book that we used in the Dallas Independent School District for several years. It is no longer in adoption, but, old school teachers hate to throw away things. And so we want to thank you in advance for educating our children. Oftentimes, diagramming sentences is something that is foreign. You can see how old this is, back when TOS was the state assessment. But this book tells you that diagram is a method of showing how the various words and parts of a sentence function and relate to the sentence as a whole. So if the sentence is trees grow, you begin to diagram a sentence by finding the simple subject, that's who or what the sentence is about. The sentence is about trees. And then you find the action or the linking verb that goes with the subject. Grow, that's the verb. It tells you what trees do. And so in order to diagram a sentence, you write the subject on a horizontal line, called the baseline, and you separate the subject and the verb with the vertical line. So trees is the subject, so it's going on the left. Grow is the verb, so it's going on the right. So you're going to look at the first set of sentences in the book, the things they carry. There are 9 sentences, I think. So you're not going to diagram them, but by the time we finish this syntax analysis lesson, you're going to then go back and see if you can go through this process and figure out what kinds of sentences Tim O'Brien is using on the very first page of that novel. All right, so adjectives and adverbs. We've talked about the parts of speech. A word that is an adjective is going to tell you which one, what kind, how many. If you look at this sentence, the young pine trees grow quite fast. Which words tell you what kind? Young tells you what kind of trees. Pine tells you what kind of trees. So if I were going to diagram those adjectives, because they describe trees, I'm going to put them on diagonal lines underneath the subject. And so they tell you here to diagram a sentence with adjectives and adverbs, you follow this model below. Note that you diagram adverbs used to modify verbs in the same way that you diagram adjectives used to modify nouns. In this sentence, the young pine trees grow quite fast. Grow is what they do. We saw that up here. But what does the word quite and what does the word fast tell me? They grow how? They grow fast. So fast would be diagrammed under grow. To what extent do they grow fast? Quite fast. So quite is an adverb, modifying the adverb fast. Both of these adverbs go under this verb, grow. So you diagram adverbs used to modify adjectives or other adverbs on a separate line just like that. When you are diagramming, after you find your subject and your predicate, you ask yourself what? If your word is an action verb, you're going to oftentimes get an answer called the direct object. So, trees give us medicines. You still go through the same process. Who or what is the sentence about? Trees. That's going to be the subject. What do trees do? What's the verb? They give. So I put the predicate or the verb on the right side. Say these two words together. Trees give what? Whatever the answer is, that word is the direct object. We'll put the direct object to the right of the verb. But we draw a vertical line that does not go all the way through. Trees give what? They don't give us. They don't pick us up and hand us to anybody. They give medicines to us. Anything that answers the word to or for, but in the sentence it comes between the verb and the direct object, It's what we call an indirect object. So in this sentence, the word us is an indirect object. All right, so having done the first part of what's going on top of that baseline, I think you should stop, probably rewind, and make sure you understand this much. Because this exercise, you're going to actually diagram these sentences. But you need to start with being able to find the subject and the verb so that you can figure out what a simple sentence is. Pause the video because I'm going to move from that introduction to diagramming to the 4 kinds of sentences. All right, so if you're clear with the subject and the verb and how to find the direct object, we're going to now explain the 4 types of sentence structures. The first kind is a simple sentence. Remember our INDEPENDENT? And I asked, do you know what that means? Lesson back in the fall. The independent clause is a group of words that can stand alone. It has a subject, it has a predicate, it makes sense all by itself. So when you have one independent clause all by itself, we call that a simple sentence. Just one independent clause. It has a subject, has a predicate, it can stand alone. It can have lots of adjectives, lots of adverbs, lots of phrases, but as long as you have one independent clause, that is a simple sentence. A compound sentence has 2 or more independent clauses. So, if I say, I am explaining sentence structure, that's one simple sentence. I is the subject of the sentence. Am explaining is the predicate because you want to keep your helping verb and your main verb all together. The complete predicate is the verb. I am explaining is your verb or your predicate. If you ask yourself what, I am explaining what? Structure. Sentence structure becomes my direct object. So that's one independent clause. Therefore, that sentence is a simple sentence. If I say, I am explaining sentence structure and I am making a video, I am making a video is also an independent clause. So because I have 2 independent clauses, now I have what's called a compound sentence. So as long as you have all independent clauses, but you have more than one, your sentence is compound. The third type is a complex sentence. We gave you a list of what we call subordinating conjunctions in the fall, or our wobble wobble what's it words. When a group of words has a subject and a predicate, but it begins with one of these conjunctions, we're going to call that clause subordinate. When. If I say when I am explaining sentence structure, now that doesn't sound like a complete sentence. If I say after I'm explaining sentence structure, you're expecting me to say something else. So that group of words is not a complete sentence. It's a subordinate clause or dependent clause because it needs other words to help it make sense. So subordinating conjunctions, when they come in front of an independent clause, we'll change that independent clause to a dependent clause. So when, after, before. Now before can be a subordinating conjunction. If I say before I go outside, that becomes a subordinate clause. But if I just say before the game, then that's just a prepositional phrase. So you got to think about what follows the subordinate. I don't know why he needed to announce that in the middle of my video, but it's all good. All right, so I was explaining subordinate clauses, and I'm hoping that you understand the difference between an independent clause because it can make sense. It can stand alone, just like the girl in the song. and a subordinate clause. All right, so if I give you two groups of words, let's see if you can determine which group of words is subordinate and which group of words is independent. Although I am trying to listen. And I am trying to listen. Although I'm trying to listen is a subordinate clause because although in front of it makes you wonder, well, what about that? I am trying to listen all by itself is an independent clause. All right, so when you have one independent clause and one dependent or one subordinate, one of each, now your sentence is complex. It's a little more complicated because you got a main idea, but you've got some additional information that you're trying to add into your thought. All right, so if I say, because I'm trying to make a video, I need all of these extraneous noises to be silenced. Because I'm trying to make a video is a subordinate clause. I need all of these extraneous sounds to be silenced is an independent clause. Because I have two different kinds, that's a complex sentence. All right, so what makes a sentence compound and complex? If you have at least two sentences or two independent clauses, think about what makes a sentence compound. Remember, just like in chemistry, a compound has more than one element. In English grammar, a compound sentence has more than one independent clause. What makes it complex? Well, if I add a subordinate clause to it, if I add a subordinate or dependent, they mean the same thing. If I add a subordinate clause to an independent clause, that makes it complex. But if I have two independent clauses, now it's compound. And if I have one subordinate clause, it's now complex. I know this will make more sense if I had a board in front of me. So I'm hoping that on this next video or when we do our Zoom meeting, you can ask questions. All right, so Ari, are you ready to video? If she is, we'll add an addendum.